Welcome to the Marketing Phoenix podcast, where you're going to learn the best growth strategies from marketing that leads to sales. My name is Melissa Rogozinski, and I'll be your host. Before we dive in, please be sure to click that follow button and subscribe to our show. Also, please remember to download and share your favorite episodes and tag RPC Strategies on LinkedIn. 5-star ratings are always welcome. All right, Jon, I am so excited to have you with me for my very first interview of the 2025 Marketing Phoenix podcast series. So we're going to be talking about marketing and revenue operations, which gets us both excited because nothing else really works if you don't have marketing and revenue operations in place. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background and how your career evolved and how we met, and just like what gets you excited about marketing and RevOps.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. First of all, I'm thrilled to be here. So my name is Jon McGinley, and I have had a really wild ride to get here. I think, when I look back, I'm probably, I'm into what I call my fourth quarter right now in my business career. So they're 30 years behind me. I started I started with the dot-com boom and bust in the late 90s, early 2000s. Did almost 10 years on the agency side. Then went to the client side. Did probably another 15 years on the client side. And then most recently, I have been doing some fractional work. So really, I went from internet era to agency, kind of what I call analog agency, to digital transformation, to social, to and then I moved into the client side. Had a good run there, and then was acquired by Salesforce. Did about 18 months working for Salesforce, which was quite a remarkable experience. And then I went from there into a restaurant analytics company. Did that. That was a lot of fun. And then from there, built a professional services firm, which I left in November of 21. So it's been really neat, and all along, I would say, kind of my passion, if you will, has really been around marketing, but marketing operations and how marketing and sales work together to benefit the company. And that's really, in my mind, has probably differentiated my career than a lot of other folks along the way. So long answer, but also a fairly long career right now.
Well, why do you think that really kind of sets you apart and you said differentiated you from other folks? Because I feel the same way about what we do. So why don't you dig into that a little bit more?
Sure. So, it's kind of interesting for me. During my time on the analog agency side, I got to work with some very smart creative folks. And, when I say analog agency, I mean, print ads, out of home, did a bunch of TV, a bunch of radio. This was really just as we were starting to see digital marketing and social marketing kind of start to evolve. And I got more and more interested in the ability to track results. So where, some of your audience who may be old enough to remember when we talked about GRPs and things like that, they were kind of false metrics, or they were best intent metrics, as opposed to when we started getting actual click data. And then I could do attribution. And, the little nerd in me got really excited about the fact that now I can turn around and say, oh, if I do this, this is what happens. And, as luck would have it, I got involved very early and sort of matured as the ability to do that matured.
So, tell us, so you and I met, we had a mutual client, and we met last summer, in the summer of, what is this now, 25? So we met in the summer 24. And we both came to the table with both being exceptional at marketing and sales, activities and tasks and process. And we very easily fell into our respective roles, where you were more of the operations and I was more of the marketing. So talk a little bit about, and not like just me in particular, but like when you have that kind of a synergy, because this really sets the stage for the rest of what we want to talk about. Absolutely. It's more than just aligning marketing and sales. It's a true hybrid role. It's a marriage of the two. We can't talk about silos anymore. And like I said, it's more than just alignment, because alignment just puts them side by side. I'm talking about a real marriage a real cohesive. So talk, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about our relationship and that synergy, but more in the general context so our audience really understands this is how these two people who run these programs should come together.
Sure, absolutely. And again, I'll go back to when I first met you. I found there was a kinship almost immediately, and we both saw the world through the same lens. And as someone in an operations role in that capacity, it's both refreshing and a relief to be able to talk to a peer and know that she knows what I mean when I say, if I'm paying attention to cost of acquisition or I'm looking at specific KPIs that I want to manage and control. And you were almost finishing my sentences. So that to me was the first checkbox, I guess, in a long list of them where I got, oh, Rogo gets this, right? And the industry that we were talking about, or the one that we were servicing, you had this amazing depth of knowledge and connection. So all of a sudden you were like, oh, I can connect you with that person because they do that thing that you're looking for. So when I look at, as an operator, one, great to have someone who understood the importance of, I'll say marketing operations, but I really was looking at it as a revenue operations. So how does marketing serve sales? How do we as an organization optimize for specific things, whether that be marketing activity, sales activity? And you came to me with ideas all the time of, hey, what if we try this? What if we do this? And for me, that meant I didn't have to think about that, or I didn't have to dig into my toolbox and figure those things out. I could easily go, hey, Rogo, let's work on this. And then you would be coming back very quickly with, okay, well, we've got this campaign idea. We can roll with this. And it hits your ideal customer at these particular points. And to my earlier statement, you understood who the audience was. So in fact, you were probably better qualified to identify our buyer persona than I was because you had all that experience. And again, for me, that's incredibly valuable because I was focused on getting operations running tight. And any good business, if you're not driving the revenue, you have a whole other host of problems. So I knew that you could take care of helping me feed the top of the lead funnel and then helping me work them through the system.
Yeah, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit further in the interview about, whether you're a startup or a mid-market provider or an investor, that's, there's three important things that you need to have in place, and having the right team is absolutely number one, and having those synergies. So let me give a few statistics then, and we're going to really dig into this. So as Jon and I are talking about marketing and sales operations, I'm probably going to carry a little bit of load about marketing ops, and he's going to talk about RevOps. We're both equally skilled and experts at both, but when you've got these two things really married correctly and they're in the right relationship, you're looking at significant increases in qualified lead generation, not just lead generation, qualified leads. We've seen a 25% increase in qualified leads with a client when we executed correctly for pre and post event planning. 50% or better inbound deal rates, right? When you're qualifying, you're not just throwing spaghetti on the wall, you're not, falsely qualifying everybody and, beefing up your pipeline and it's not real, right? You don't have a realistic opportunity to close. But that also leads to best in class close rates, which anything above 30% is a best in class close rate. So when you've properly aligned marketing and sales operations and married them correctly, you're going to see significant increases in qualified leads, your deal rate, and being able to close on those deals. You want to add anything to that, Jon?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And again, when I look at that, it's so important to get that alignment between marketing and sales. And oftentimes what I'll look for is a bit of an SLA or a service level agreement between marketing and sales. And it sounds like a lot. It sounds like you're taking on a lot, but it's very simply like, sales. If marketing passes a lead to sales for sales, so if marketing considers it MQL or marketing qualified, it passes it to sales. Sales has 24, 48 hours to identify that lead, accept it. Great, they're going to work it, or kick it back. And this is the important part about kicking it back. If you're kicking it back, why? Give me a reason, right? Why do you think they weren't qualified? And once you start to get those alignments, that helps your side of the house in marketing figure out where they may be going wrong, or where that, whether it be a source or a type, there's better alignment there. And then from the sales side of the house, really start digging in on, okay, so what's our deal flow? How fast are they moving once they get to a sales qualified stage? Are they fetching up in a particular area? Are they moving smoothly through? And looking at that side of the house, that gives us a great opportunity to really kind of tighten the screws and making that process better.
All right, so let's define marketing operations and revenue operations for our audience. So marketing operations, I think of that as, my first thought is always the tech stack: your website, your CRM, your social, your email, and how are you leveraging these, how are they set up individually, and how are they integrated, and how are they talking to each other? And everything needs to communicate with the CRM, because that's where the handoff between marketing and sales takes place. So you have to have the tech stack set up correctly, you have to have it integrated correctly, and then that's where sales gets the best kind of information. And that right there is what's going to make sales process, again, qualified leads, deal rates, and being able to close them a lot more efficient. And I've seen, it doesn't matter if it's a startup, or I've seen a 40-year-old company come to us, family-owned company, that they have nothing set up. And so you maybe you're at 8 million ARR, but you could be at 25 million ARR. Like, that's significant.
Absolutely.
So what about you?
So to add to that a little bit, yeah. So, and again, I often caution people, it's we can get hung up on tools very quickly. And listen, in the sales and marketing world, especially in SaaS, for the last 15 years, there's been no shortage of new tools added. But what it boils right down to is, I don't care how many tools you have, if your process isn't right, you're never going to get the results that you can. All it's going to do is give you bad results faster, or you're just going to end up spending a bunch of money on things that don't really deliver the ROI that you're expecting, or that you've been promised in the sales process. So, hats off to people in the SaaS world, in SaaS sales. They do an amazing job. Probably where I see it fall down most is the implementation, and that implementation usually fails at the process stage. So all that being said, and you're 100% accurate, CRM is at the center of everything we do. Lots of different CRMs, good for different reasons, good for different industries, etc. When I look at the sales operation side of things, it is really kind of, once that sales qualified lead has been accepted, we're looking at things like, what is your deal flow? Like, how long are you in different stages? So, past the sales qualification stage, you're starting to really look at the different areas, and how fast they're moving through, right? So, have we done the demo? Has there been feedback? Have we qualified the people, or identified the people on the call? What are they doing? How fast is the feedback? What are the questions like? And then really, can you get it down to a negotiation point? And then really, if we've done all of the things at the top of the funnel first, and I should probably say that a lot of my experiences comes from the SaaS side of things. Do have experience in other industries, but SaaS qualification and SaaS process tends to be a little bit, very streamlined.
For sure. And like marketing qualified leads, to me are like, again, you have to have everything set up, but like we did an ebook on sales emails, and we set up this 10-step lead magnet workflow, which we did a video on, because we're having these conversations with clients. And I was like, let me just do a video. Let me show you how this is supposed to work, right? If it works right, then you're giving them content that your audience really wants. When you you've got it set up on the website correctly, you've got an appropriate call to action. Your web form needs to be very simple. First, last, and email. You just don't need more than that at this stage. And then promoting it appropriately through social media and, email campaigns. And with a good lead magnet, you've probably got about 30 days to really strike while the iron's hot. You may see some trickle in after that, but your first 30 days when the lead magnet goes out is probably your best opportunity. But then they go through the website, that web form should connect to the CRM, create a lead record. It needs to automatically give certain information, but it needs to create a tag internally so you know which asset they downloaded. It needs to send a task notification immediately to the highest level sales executive and maybe a couple of other members of the sales team, so that these leads get to them immediately. And like you said earlier, they've got 24 to 48 hours to follow up. They can follow up themselves through email or phone call, but you can also set up like an automated workflow of a few emails to kind of keep the prospect warm, and then that's part of the process where, again, I hand that off to you as the revenue guy. I do my workflow, and there's a point where that workflow where the salesperson takes it off my plate and they start reaching out, whether it's through LinkedIn or email or phone call, to start a more personal conversation. So that's my idea of how it should work. And then what's the handoff to you in sales, and what would you recommend?
So again, depending on the sophistication of the organization, so sometimes you'll have something called lead routing. So you may be able to skip that step of going to the highest person in the sales chain to then have her parse out the leads. Again, depending on the size of the organization, if you use lead routing, it could be by named accounts, it could be by geographic area, could be by industry. There's a bunch of different criteria that go into lead routing, and that in of itself is a bit of a special sauce, if you will. There are a few products that do it really, really well. But yeah, once you are over onto the sales side of the organization, if you are properly aligned with your marketing, you have collateral material that sort of is on the lead up to the demo, post demo. You want to keep, like, if you're nurturing on the pre-qualified side, I'm equally or stronger nurturing on the sales side. So, very rarely are you closing a deal on the very first call. If you are, fantastic, take my hat off to you. But realistically speaking, you're looking at probably 1 to 2 presentations, getting different stakeholders, making sure that your value proposition is lined up for each of those key stakeholders. And then really work your way through the system. And you post sales qualification, there's a bunch of, you could be looking at social proof. You could be looking at things like testimonials, G2 crowd ratings, and other things. In fact, I was part of a group just before Christmas that were talking about customers doing research on Reddit. So, this piece where suddenly, G2 crowd and those other ranking sites are great, but there's a bunch of folks now having conversations over on something like Reddit. So me, as the curious, somewhat nerdy guy that I am, I'm now looking at that saying, okay, so what are these conversations that are now happening over here? How do they influence my sales positioning? Is there anything that I need to do to address that? So again, a little bit in the weeds, but just a thought.
Let's go into the weeds then. Let's talk a little bit more about that sales process, because prospecting and sales process is all part of revenue operations, right? And so once you do that handoff, if you do it right, then the marketing qualified lead is a true qualified targeted lead. But marketing can't do anything with it after generating the targeted lead. Sales has to step in, and I'm not a fan of jumping straight into the demo and starting to talk about features and benefits. The first thing you need to do is really, once that comes in, your job in sales is to go do the research on that client individually and the business, and discover what are their business goals, what's standing in the way of their business goals, what is it about your products and features that will help them overcome those obstacles in order to accomplish their goals. And that, you can develop what we call an SAP, a strategic account plan. Like, it takes time to do the research, but you've got a targeted lead come in, block off an hour and do the targeted research, because especially in B2B, these are high value sales. It's worth it for you to take an hour off, get quiet and go do the research and map out a strategic account plan. And then when you do that, when you reach out, you can tailor your phone call or your email or both to say, hey, thank you so much for downloading whatever asset. I'd love to speak with you, and you can, if you've done your SAP, you can mention 2 or 3 things from the SAP about their goals and the things that seem to be standing in their way. And, hey, I think, we could, I would love to have a conversation about helping you solve this problem. And I know for me, anytime I've done that, 100% of the time, the response has been, you hit the nail on the head. You're 100% right. I feel heard. And I say this in my articles and my videos, and it's so true because I got contracts out of these. When your prospects are responding to you that way, they are buying, you are not selling.
Absolutely. I can't agree with that more. I mean, and when you and I first met, whether you were consciously or unconsciously doing that, you were proving that point to me over and over again, right? I didn't know you when I first met you, and we were introduced through a mutual acquaintance. And the fact that you knew so much about the business I was working on, and you, I'm guessing, were guessing what my pain points were, that gave me a lot of confidence that, one, you knew what you were talking about, but two, I had a partner. I didn't have a vendor. And to me, that's an important distinction. And you did touch on one thing that I do like to say to people is, they're selling, but then there's also helping your client buy or helping your prospect buy. And that's a very big difference. And the ability to help your prospect buy, that makes the sales process so much smoother.
And that's helping the prospect buy. Marketing ops and revenue ops both have a function in that. And this, again, is one of these marriages. So the marketing ops is to flesh out the ICPs correctly so that their messaging is correct. So that, where, I had a client come to me one time and said, hey, this is who we think our ICP is, right? And this is their responsibility. They're most interested in keeping up with the latest and greatest in, tech news, whatever. And then when we go in and interview real people and that's the thing too, we've started going where we're not just creating a general ICP. If we're able to, we reach out to our own network and we ask people who sit in those roles to sit with us and try to create, and we'll do 2 or 3 and try to create a composite of it. But then what ended up happening was, their business goals were not about keeping up with technology. It was about, bringing in new clients, managing the work for those clients, managing the staff that's doing the work for those clients, and revenue generation, right? Yep. So, but here's the thing, that technology, that product still meets those needs. But when your marketing says, hey, they're interested in, keeping up with the latest and greatest in tech because that's what you want to sell them, versus the client saying, no, I'm responsible for bringing in business and managing the clients and the staff and driving revenue. Your product or service still meets the need, but it 100% changes the messaging that marketing is putting out. So marketing has this runway that they have to get the messaging just right in order to create a targeted lead for sales. But then sales needs to mirror that messaging through doing a strategic account plan and other research, and having the CRM set up so that these two are working together for the common goal. And that's what creates those significant increases, in the leads and the deal rates and closing deals.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%.
All right, so we could talk about marketing analytics and KPIs, right? So I can talk about websites, domain authority, and now GEO. I heard somebody say that term this week, and I was so excited because we've been doing research, and I wrote a couple articles on the death of SEO, part 1 and part 2,
Yep.
And it's all about how AI is impacting search. Google, everybody knows Google. Everybody, whether they realize it or not, has been using social media platforms for search for a long time before AI became what it is now. But then the LLMs now, people are going to the LLMs to do search, right? And there's a difference between putting in keywords on Google and social media platforms versus the LLMs. People are putting in full sentences, full questions, right? So it's a different start to the search. So I was at a networking event and someone said generative search. And I was like, ooh, I want to talk to you about GEO. And I was like, that's my new word of 2025, generative search. Yeah. So again, analytics, social, email, digitalized, whatever, CRM lead scoring. Let me just throw all of that to you. Websites, GEO, SEO, social, email, digital ads, CRM, all of it. Okay. Those are marketing. But Jon, why does that matter to sales? Why do any of those matter to sales?
Wow, that's a bit of a loaded question. So first of all, GEO, I love that term. Not super familiar with it. And a lot of my folks right now are asking me similar questions that they're asking you, like, how do I get prepared for that? And the answer is, we're still figuring it out. We're getting better at it, but really it goes back to, if you do understand who your buyer is and understand why they're buying, and you're creating content that is relevant to their purchase decision or their buyer journey. If you stick to the basics, I'm a firm believer that those things will benefit you in the end. So kind of put a point on that part. The broader question around why does sales care about all of these things? Again, if you want to talk about attribution, we could probably have an entire hour-long conversation around attribution. And depending on the maturity or sophistication of the organization, oftentimes, you can that's down a really deep rabbit hole if you're not careful. And I've seen organizations worry about attribution too early in their journey and get, hung up on things that, when you're at a certain stage, yes, it's important that you have the pipeline filled. And yes, there is an element of luck to the way you are choosing some of your channels. And you need to get better at that over time. But I also wouldn't worry terribly about the attribution as much as I would about, okay, the ones that I am qualifying, why are they a good qualification? Which ones are moving through the funnel faster? What do we know about that? Why did they move through faster? What source did they come from? So, did you meet them at a trade show? Did they go to your website? Did they download the asset? Great. People who do this behave this way, it moves faster. That's a good thing. How do I get more of those people, as an example? Things equally important, what doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, we're spending a bunch of money and effort on, I'm going to pick on Instagram, not fairly, but if we're dumping a bunch of money into Instagram and not getting the results that we hope that we would, what is that telling us, right? So where I do think the attribution is important to a degree, don't get hung up on it unless you're now tweaking that. Like if you are so sophisticated that you can get additional lift by applying extra pressure in specific areas. A lot of the companies that I work with are not as far along. So they are really in the, they have a product, they have product market fit. If we're really lucky, you're starting to get market pull. Those are the places where I like to spend a little bit more time, a little bit more effort, dig into the attribution, not in the minutia, but understanding channel, okay, message, okay, what does that ICP mapping look like? This deal's moving faster than this deal. What can we infer from that information?
Yeah, and we do a once a year, we call it the Great RPC CRM Cleanup. We do it once a year. Nick coined that term, and now Sophia has helped me with that. But it was significant in my prospecting efforts for the last couple of weeks. Now that we're recording this on January 23rd. This is coming out later in February, but I was able to go through my leads and my contacts management because we did all this work on the CRM and cleaning up. And I've put 5 years into this business. Will be 6 in April. So we've got that time and that traction. As I was doing, I pulled up the leads and contacts. I was able to filter through using some of the custom fields and the list that we did. And all of this is operations, everybody. This is marketing and sales operations. And I pulled it up from both modules. And there's one segment that I have been pursuing or been open to because it's somewhere where I kind of have some roots. But this segment has commoditized. It's really hard to help them be competitive at this point because where they are and they're a couple decades into it. I went through and just mass updated and disqualified everybody in my database that was in this market segment because it's time to move on. Yep. And we had developed other ICPs because of opportunities coming to us. And we did a lot of work to do that and then update the CRM accordingly. So, that's Jon and I are talking about the nuts and bolts of marketing and revenue operations, but the example I just gave, that's seeing it in action, right? So I'm not wasting my time. Maybe there were 87 people, I don't know the number, maybe there were 87 people I just disqualified. Like that takes a lot of time for me to email and phone call and set up tasks to reach back out to them to get appointments if they are no longer, a qualified target for me.
Yeah, and I will add to that, very brave of you to do that. I've worked with lots of organizations that the second I start saying, well, okay, let's go through your leads, like who are we disqualifying, who are we kicking out? And a lot of organizations, like, they kind of tense up and, well, I don't want to get rid of them. They might still be a lead. I'm like, yeah, but we've already just talked, like, they're not who your ideal customer is right now. They haven't heard from you, and you haven't heard from them in over 2 years. Like, this is, if they come back into your funnel, great. We can create a new lead for them at that time. But like what you're describing, I think, once a year, sure, right? Like that's the call it the courage to go through and do that and get rid of stuff that isn't useful to you anymore. I mean, we could probably talk on a much more philosophical level on we should all do that in our life sometimes. But with respect to the CRM, I think, being brave or courageous enough to go through and say, this isn't who I'm going after anymore.
Well, and I realized there were better opportunities.
Yes,
and if I have limited time, right? I have a great team and they've taken a lot off my plate, but I have limited time and resources, and where we are, it was just the right decision. And, we, even back in November, we turned down a prospect that wanted to spend money with us. And we were excited about a lot of things about the product, but their team, their operational functions were between marketing and sales. It didn't align with us. And we could have fixed it, but it was just kind of one of those personalities, that we'd seen it before. And it was better for us to walk away than to try to get a contract that maybe would have lasted 3 or 4 months. And then it crumbles because they're not ready to receive what you're ready to offer to help them fix their problem. Right. So let's talk about a lead magnet workflow. So I don't know if you've seen the video that I did, but this came up with a client recently, and because we did this, great lead magnet for them, but because operations weren't set up and we weren't in control of some things, it didn't perform as well as we had anticipated. But we did an ebook. It's a 30-page ebook on sales emails, and it's from 20 years of my experience. So we launched it on November 4th, and by the end of November, we had gained, just through organic, pushing it out through social, and a couple of influencers in our industry, we gained 75 leads, targeted leads.
Yeah.
So we had created a resource that our target audience wanted. We got it up on the website, wrote it, designed it, whatever. We got it up on the website. The web form, the CTA, was first, last, and email. It was set up properly. It was connected to my CRM. We pushed it out to social. We got 75 leads. And for the next 3 weeks, once a week, so when they downloaded it, they got a thank you email. It pops up in a PDF and it lets them download it from there. Then they get a really nice personal thank you email from me with just some additional resources, nothing pushy. A week later, they get a second email that digs a little bit more into what our company is and what we do and whatnot. And then a week later, they get a third email that digs a little bit further into that about kind of like actual products and features and stuff like that. And then that's where the handoff between the marketing and the sales efforts happen. So after that, and this was kind of during the holidays, so like a week later, I start reaching out. If they haven't already connected with me on LinkedIn, I reach out to them on LinkedIn. Hey, thank you so much for downloading this. Would love to connect with you. And if they weren't the decision maker, because you need to know that about your ICPs too. Are they gatekeepers, influencers? Are they decision makers, end users, what have you? If they weren't decision makers, I still reached out because I want to have a relationship with them, because I might have to go through that relationship to get where I need. But I also found their decision makers. Mm-hmm. And I sent an email, said, hey, or LinkedIn, just want to let you know a couple of your sales team downloaded this resource, and I'd love to talk with you about opportunities to collaborate. And then when they accept it, then I send out the next one about setting some 15-minute virtual coffee chats. And I have a lot of success with that. So that's, again, we're talking about marketing, revenue operations really works, and it's married together the right way. You have the right you know who your audience is. You know exactly what they want to accomplish, what's in their way. You know how to create marketing and sales messaging framed around helping them buy solutions instead of you selling features, right? And then you have it set up correctly through your tech stack, and then that process from the handoff to marketing and sales. So I cleaned up my database, and I'm also spending my time with targeted people who downloaded this resource, and I'm able to set meetings better. And so when I do have those meetings, by the time they hit my calendar, they're 75% qualified.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's awesome, and you did hit on a place that I like to reinforce it. Social's now become a key component in the nurturing process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you have those things set up, you've built your asset, and it is appropriate for the audience and the things that they want and care about. But your follow up and follow through is amazing, right? So those are the kind of things that if anyone were to take anything away from this conversation, like one, make sure that you have your system set up properly, and two, like make sure that you're adding social into that, because I think that is almost a requirement these days, and is sometimes still overlooked. Or I have some folks who might be a little, oh, I don't want to be pushy through social. You touched on it. Like none of your communications is overly pushy, right? You're not selling at that point. You're helping them buy. You're expressing interest. You're connecting in a meaningful way. That's usually helpful. And again, depending on what type of industry and what level of sophistication we're at, I mean that to me that's gold right there.
So before we jump into something fun,
Yeah.
marketing and revenue operations. So you've got the next, say, 60 seconds to be professional about marketing and revenue operations. From everything we've talked about, what do you want our audience to leave here with? How would you tie this up in a pretty bow?
Pretty bow. Okay, so revenue operations isn't sexy, but it's essential. I like to think of it as the plumbing and electric of your business, right? So if you think about it in the terms of a house is very valuable if you can't flush the toilet and you can't turn the lights on. In my opinion, revenue operations is that. The way that marketing and sales become aligned under the umbrella of revenue operations really helps you get the most out of the business. It allows you to attract the audience that you want to attract. It lets you engage with them in the way that you want to. And then internally, it allows the natural passover from the marketing function into the sales function. And, we haven't even talked about it, but a good revenue operations professional also touches the customer success portion of the business. So it's not just new sales, it's additional revenue growth within existing customer base. All of that is under the purview of a revenue operations specialist. And to me, get that right, your house increases in value and everyone's happy.
And you
Oh,
can
was that 30, was that 60 seconds?
And then you can go from 8 million ARR to 25 million in 3 to 5 years.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about something fun.
All right, good.
All right, let's talk about it. All right, so we're going to talk about football because the Super Bowl is right around the corner. I do understand football, believe it or not, very well. I was raised in Alabama, so that's all anybody in Alabama cares about is football. It is a culture, all right? Hear me. It is also the number one reason why I left Alabama, because after 34 years of that culture, I'm done. So, but Jon, you're in Canada. You didn't grow up with football the way that we did here in the United States, all right? So let's talk. And I saw your post on football. I guess it was over the weekend. You put out a post about football. You were excited about the Super Bowl, and then you broke it down into like how this makes business sense, offense and defense, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Canada produces 70% of the world's maple syrup, right? You guys are famous for it, right? So if you could create a football themed maple syrup flavor, what would it be called and why?
Okay, first off, a couple things. Shout out to the CFL, Canadian Football League. Not the same, but I do have to give a shout out to it. Played a different time of the year, 3 downs, larger field, bigger ball. Same game, but different. Back to your maple flavor. I would go with something like the touchdown maple blitz. Something that's, it's bold and it's dynamic and, it's like the game-winning pass in overtime. Like it is the thing that you want. It's the taste sensation that you need. And I will go one step further for those in your audience that may be on the north side of the border. Have you ever had a beaver tail?
No, I haven't had a beaver tail.
So
What's
beaver
a beaver tail?
Those in your Canadian audience will know a beaver tail, but it is fried dough. That has either powdered sugar on it, chocolate, maple syrup, cinnamon, and it's delicious.
I am so glad you explained what that is, because my brain stayed in one place. And your so a beaver tail. Moving on.
Moving on. It's fried dough. It's delicious.
A lot more interesting. Okay, so speaking of beavers, it's Canada's national animal. All right. So if the beaver played in the NFL, National Football League, what position would the beaver play?
Center. No question.
Okay.
Hardworking, dependable, key part of the offense. Working hard, snapping the ball, right in the mix, all of that, and never says boo, right? Just shows up, does his job, works hard, moves the offense.
All right. So what was the most memorable American football game you have ever watched and why?
Okay, so many. And I thought about this, and I had a few that I could have pulled on, and I'm not a Pats fan, and I feel bad for your Falcons fans, but I got to go 2017 Super Bowl. Pats came back from 28-3 down. Probably the greatest football comeback in NFL history. I looked at that and just like, whether you love or hate Tom Brady, you got to give the guy respect. He won that game. So I will say that is probably the NFL game that sticks with me the most.
So for me, it wasn't a game. It was a halftime show when Prince was. Yeah. And they had this, massive stage, all of his electric guitars. He had the twins out there, and they had these 6-inch stiletto heels. They're all wearing stiletto boots, right? And there's a documentary on this, and they get ready to perform, and and it's in an open air stadium, and it starts just pouring down, just a total downpour, just drenching everything. And the people who set it up, they were panicking, freaking out, because you have all this electronic equipment out there, and you're like, oh my God, we can't let this happen because we're going to electrocute Prince, right? And he gets out there and he decides, no, we're doing this, right? So he's out there and he starts with Purple Rain. And it's in the documentary, the people being interviewed, they're like, it's almost as if the gods literally rained on Prince. He asked for it and they gave it to him, and did Purple Rain in the rain, this torrential downpour in the middle of the Super Bowl. And it was brilliant. It was beautiful. Everybody in the stadium was drenched and soaked, but it was like this perfect, beautiful purple moment.
Still gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, I do. I've got chills now thinking about it. Yeah. So, okay. Final question.
All right.
We're down to the final four, John. Again, this is January 23rd. Super Bowl is February 9th. All right. Prediction time. And by the time this comes out, we're going to find out if you're right. So the Eagles and the Commanders, the Chiefs and the Bills. What are your predictions?
Okay, so I appreciate I'm going to either look like a genius or an idiot by the time this goes to air. But so love what Jaden Daniels has been doing with Washington this year, but I think his luck runs out this weekend. So I've got the Eagles by 10. I think they've got home field advantage. They're just too strong. I think that's my bet there. Mm-hmm. Chiefs Bills. That is going to be a great game. I think it'll be a nail biter. We've got Mahomes, who arguably one of the best quarterbacks, certainly in the modern era. I don't know. And Josh Allen with the Bills, equally good as a gunslinger. I think I got to give it a home field advantage to the Chiefs, and they squeak it out. And then I will say Super Bowl.
Eagles and Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm going to go Eagles by 7.
All right. Well, Super Bowl is February 9th. This episode goes out on February 17th. And today's January 23rd. So we'll just have to wait and see how your predictions turn out.
I was going to say, feel free to send me hate mail if you want, and or if you think I'm some sort of a genius. I guess we'll find out.
All right. Don't anybody send John hate mail, because if you do, I will show up with my Southern Belle redneck whoop ass on you, because John is my friend and I like him. Okay?
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right, John, how can people get in touch with you?
So always available on LinkedIn. Doing my best to have a pretty strong presence there. And I have a sales marketing advisory company. It's a go-to-market company called Climb Marketing. It's at climbmarketing.ca. And yeah, love to hear from anyone in your audience. And again, Melissa, I can't express how much I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last, call it 7, 8 months. I feel like we're kindred spirits in the way that we approach both business and how we see the importance of revenue operations, specifically marketing operations. I love what you're doing and wish you continued success.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
All right. So everybody, we will put contact information in our show notes, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. Thanks so much.